Evicted for her secret lesbian relationship. Judges ruling forces HOA board to publicly apologize. The letter arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning, its formal language cutting like a knife through the illusion of safety Amara and Claire had carefully constructed over the past 5 years. Due to violations of the community covenant regarding traditional family structures, you are required to vacate the premises of 124 Oakwood Lane within 30 days. It read, signed by the president of the Pinecrest Estates Homeowners Association. Amara, a 34-year-old rising star at Harlan & Associates, one of New York's most prestigious law firms, felt her stomach drop as she read it aloud to Claire, her partner of 5 years, a 32-year-old associate professor of political science at Columbia University. The discovery had come from a nosy neighbor who had seen them through a half-drawn curtain sharing a quick kiss after a long day, and reported it straight to the board. In the elite gated community 30 miles north of Manhattan, where CEOs, hedge fund managers, and tenured academics lived behind wrought iron gates, appearances were currency, and their hidden lesbian relationship was suddenly the ultimate liability. Amara set the paper down on the marble island, her dark eyes narrowing with the cold precision she used in boardrooms. They're citing moral incompatibility. It's code for discrimination, and they know it. Claire's blonde hair fell across her face as she leaned forward, her voice steady but edged with the exhaustion of someone who had spent years measuring every public gesture. We built this life together in secret so we could keep climbing. One kiss and it's all on fire. They had met 5 years earlier at a policy conference in Washington, D.C., where Amara had moderated a panel on corporate ethics, and Claire had presented research on gender equity in higher education. Sparks flew during the Q&A when Claire challenged Amara's defense of a client's tax strategy. Afterward, they grabbed coffee that turned into dinner, then late-night talks that turned into everything. They had moved into Pinecrest as roommates because both careers demanded flawless optics. Amara gunning for partnership at a firm whose biggest clients included conservative super PACs, Claire chasing tenure at an institution whose donors still whispered about family values. They had perfected the act. Separate bedrooms for show, shared laughter at neighborhood barbecues, careful distance at firm events. Now the mask was ripped away. Amara paced the open-plan living room, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the manicured lawns and distant city skyline. I can fight this. I know the Fair Housing Act inside out. We file under discrimination based on sexual orientation. New York law is clear. Claire crossed her arms, the silk blouse she wore to lecture still crisp despite the hour. And what about your partnership vote next month? Harlan's clients will drop us the second this hits the press. My department chair already warned me about the grant renewal. The rain drummed harder against the glass. Amara stopped, turning to face the woman she loved more than the corner office she had sacrificed friendships to reach. If we walk away now, we lose the house and the illusion of control. If we fight, we might lose everything else. Claire stepped closer, her hand brushing Amara's wrist in the gesture that had always grounded them. Then we fight together. But promise me no half measures. No strategic distance for the sake of your career. Amara nodded, yet inside a colder calculus had already begun. She knew the board had allies. Her own senior partner had golfed with the HOA president last summer. One wrong filing and the leak would spread from Pinecrest to Wall Street in hours. That afternoon they drove into the city together, the silence in the Tesla thick with unspoken strategy. At the firm, Amara slipped into her glass-walled office and began drafting the complaint while pretending it was a pro bono housing case. Across campus, Claire canceled a seminar to meet her department chair, smiling through questions about personal living arrangements. By evening they sat at their kitchen island again, takeout tie cooling between them, mapping the legal timeline. The HOA had 30 days to respond. They would file within 48 hours. Amara's phone buzzed. Her boss, Richard Harlan himself. Reynolds, my office tomorrow. We need to discuss client optics. She deleted the notification without replying. Claire watched her, reading the tension in the set of her jaw. That's the first domino. Amara met her gaze. Then we make sure the last one falls on them. But as they climbed into bed later, the king-sized mattress that had always felt like their private sanctuary now felt like a battlefield. Amara lay awake long after Claire's breathing evened out, staring at the ceiling. Partnership meant 7 figures, influence, the ability to finally stop looking over her shoulder. Love meant Claire, the woman who made every calculated risk worth it. The choice had never been this sharp before. Outside, the rain slowed to a drizzle, but inside the storm was only beginning. The court date was set for 3 weeks away, and every hour between now and then would test whether their love could survive the very ambitions that had brought them together. The complaint hit the courthouse clerk's office at 9:07 a.m. the next morning, styled as a federal civil rights action with state discrimination claims layered underneath. Amara had spent the night refining language that walked the razor's edge between factual precision and emotional restraint. She knew the judge assigned, Honorable Elena Vargas, had a reputation for cutting through corporate smokescreens. Claire reviewed every line before they filed, her academic precision catching nuances Amara's litigator instincts sometimes missed. "We frame it as selective enforcement," Claire suggested. The board let the straight couple at 118 keep their unmarried roommate without a whisper. Amara smiled despite the weight in her chest. "You're learning fast, Professor." Back at Harlan and Associates, the senior partner's office smelled of leather and expensive scotch even at 10 in the morning. Richard Harlan leaned back in his ergonomic chair, silver hair perfectly styled. "Reynolds, I'm hearing rumors about a little community dispute up in Pinecrest. Clients are nervous. The Mercer Group doesn't do optics that include alternative living arrangements." Amara kept her face neutral, the same mask she wore in depositions. "It's a housing matter, sir. Nothing that touches firm business." Harlan's smile never reached his eyes. "Make it go away quietly, or the partnership vote might need to be postponed. We can't have whispers during the annual retreat." The threat hung between them like smoke. Amara left the office with her pulse hammering, already calculating how much of her soul she might have to trade. At Columbia, Claire's rival, Associate Professor Marcus Lang, cornered her in the faculty lounge. "Heard you and your roommate are having HOA trouble. Interesting timing with your tenure file under review." His tone dripped false sympathy. Claire met his gaze without flinching. "My personal life is irrelevant to my scholarship, Marcus. Unless you're volunteering to explain why your own grant applications keep getting flagged for ethical concerns." The jab landed. Lang's face tightened. But the damage was done. Word would spread through the department by lunch. That evening Amara and Claire sat on their balcony with glasses of Cabernet, the city lights twinkling like distant accusations. "Harlan basically told me to choose," Amara admitted, voice low. Claire's fingers traced the stem of her glass. "And what did you tell him?" Silence stretched. Amara finally spoke. "I told him it's a roommate dispute, but I'm already drafting a contingency plan. Separate addresses on paper for 6 months if the press gets wind." Claire set her glass down hard enough to slosh wine. "A contingency? That's a polite word for leaving me hanging while you climb." Amara reached for her hand, but Claire pulled back. "I'm not asking you to tank your career. I'm asking you not to treat ours like collateral damage." The argument that followed was quiet, controlled, the kind powerful women have when both know the stakes. They reconciled before midnight, but the crack remained. Amara's ambition had shown its teeth, and Claire had seen it. The next 2 weeks blurred into strategy sessions, late-night briefings, and careful public performances. Amara took a business trip to Boston that was really a solo hotel room where she rehearsed cross-examinations. Claire taught her classes with extra poise, ignoring the sidelong glances. The HOA's response brief arrived, laden with affidavits from neighbors claiming discomfort and citing outdated covenant language from 1987. Amara read it at 2 a.m., highlighter in hand, recognizing the legal fingerprints of her own firm's outside counsel. The betrayal stung deeper than she expected. When she finally crawled into bed, Claire was still awake. "They're using your playbook against us." Amara pulled her close. "Then we rewrite the game." But in the dark, doubt gnawed. How much rewriting would cost them both? Courtroom 17B smelled of polished wood and nervous sweat. Judge Vargas, a no-nonsense woman in her late 50s, opened the hearing with a warning. "This is not a morality trial. This is a discrimination case under New York law. Keep it relevant or I will sanction both sides." Amara stood at the plaintiff's table in a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's rent, Claire beside her in tailored navy. The HOA board sat across the aisle, 5 older white men and 1 woman, all wearing the same smug certainty that money and connections had always protected them. Amara's opening was surgical. Your Honor, the defendants selectively enforced a covenant that has not been applied to any heterosexual cohabitants in the last decade. This is not about family values. It is about punishing my client and Professor Thompson for who they love. She introduced affidavits from 3 straight couples who had lived together unmarried without complaint. The board's attorney objected repeatedly, but Vargas overruled most. Claire testified next, her academic calm cracking only once when she described the constant performance of just roommates. We hid because the world we work in still penalizes honesty. But hiding shouldn't be a precondition for having a home. Cross-examination was brutal. The HOA lawyer tried to paint Claire as an activist professor whose research threatened traditional values. Amara objected so fiercely the judge sustained her before the question finished. Then came the first crack in Amara's armor. Harlan and Associates outside counsel submitted a motion to intervene, claiming reputational harm to the firm. Amara had not seen it coming. During the recess she stepped into the hallway and dialed her boss. You're throwing me to the wolves. Harlan's voice was ice. Protect the client, Reynolds. Or find new clients. She hung up and returned to the courtroom with her expression locked, but Claire saw the tremor in her hands. That night the argument was louder. You swore no half measures, Claire said, voice shaking. Yet your own firm is trying to bury us to save face. Amara poured whiskey she didn't drink. I'm drafting a motion to disqualify their counsel. But if I burn that bridge, the partnership is gone. Everything I've worked for since law school, gone. Claire's eyes filled but she refused to cry. And what about everything we built together? Does that count less because it doesn't come with a corner office? They slept on opposite sides of the bed for the first time in years. The next morning Amara woke to an empty pillow and a note. I have an early lecture. Decide what you're willing to lose. The hearing resumed with new evidence. Leaked emails from the HOA board discussing the lesbian problem and how to handle it quietly before donors notice. Amara had obtained them through a whistleblower, another resident who had grown tired of the board's hypocrisy. Judge Vargas's eyebrows rose. The board's attorney scrambled. Amara pressed the advantage, her voice steady even as her heart fractured. By the end of day 2, the judge ordered expedited discovery and set the final hearing for the following week. Outside the courthouse, rain had returned. Claire waited under an umbrella. You were brilliant today. Amara took her hand for the first time in public. I'm starting to realize brilliance isn't enough if I lose you. For the first time in weeks, Claire's smile reached her eyes. But both knew the hardest choice was still ahead. Discovery turned ugly fast. The board produced text messages between Amara and Claire that a private investigator had somehow obtained. Intimate, affectionate, unmistakably romantic. Amara stared at the printouts in her home office, cheeks burning. They hacked our cloud backup. This is illegal. Claire read over her shoulder, voice tight. They're trying to shame us into dropping the suit. Amara's mind raced through countermotions. Invasion of privacy, spoliation of evidence. But the real blow came from Harlan and Associates. Her partnership file now included a concern memo citing potential conflict of interest, because the firm represented one of the board members' companies. Amara spent 3 sleepless nights drafting a settlement offer. Quiet move-out with no admission of wrongdoing, a confidentiality clause, and a lump sum. She printed it at 4 a.m. and left it on the kitchen island for Claire to find. When Claire read it at breakfast, the silence was worse than shouting. So this is your cold decision. You'd rather pay them to stay quiet than risk your precious partnership. Amara's voice cracked for the first time. I'm trying to protect us both. If we lose the hearing, we lose the house and the careers. Claire folded the papers neatly. Protect yourself, Amara. I'm filing my own declaration today. Tenure be damned. I'm done hiding. She left for campus without a goodbye kiss. The betrayal hung in the air like smoke. Amara called in sick, sat on the balcony, and stared at the city she had fought to conquer. Every promotion, every late night, every sacrificed weekend had led to this moment where love and ambition finally collided. She tore up the settlement and started a new motion. One that would subpoena the board's full financial records and expose how they had used community fees to fund anti-LGBTQ political donations. It was nuclear. It would also guarantee her firm dropped her. She emailed the motion draft to Claire with one line. "I choose us. Whatever is left." Claire's reply came 2 hours later. A single photo of their first trip together. Smiling on a beach in Montauk, arms around each other without fear. No words, but the message was clear. They met that night at a quiet Italian restaurant outside Pinecrest, away from prying eyes. Over candlelight, Claire reached across the table. "I was ready to walk away. Don't ever make me feel like an obstacle again." Amara squeezed her hand. "Never again. Even if it costs me everything." The reconciliation tasted bittersweet because both knew the cost was already mounting. Claire's department had frozen her grant pending review, and Amara's assistant had quietly boxed her office belongings, just in case. The final hearing loomed in 4 days, and the board had hired a high-profile PR firm to spin the story as protecting community standards. Amara and Claire drove home under the same umbrella, closer than they had been in weeks, yet both aware that survival would require one final, irreversible gamble. The final hearing day arrived under clear October skies. Courtroom 17B was packed. Reporters from the Times and local outlets, curious neighbors, even a few Columbia students. Judge Vargas opened with a stern reminder. "I have reviewed the evidence. This case is about equal protection, not personal lifestyles." Amara presented her nuclear motion first, the subpoenaed record showing the board had funneled thousands into campaigns opposing marriage equality. The board's attorney sputtered objections. Vargas allowed the evidence. Claire testified again, this time with quiet fire. "We are not asking for special treatment. We are asking for the same right to live peacefully that every other resident enjoys." Then came the board president's turn. Under Amara's cross-examination, he admitted the covenant had never been enforced against straight couples. The courtroom murmured. Amara pressed harder. "So the only difference is that my client loves a woman?" The man's face reddened. "We have standards." Judge Vargas leaned forward. "Standards that appear to violate state and federal law, sir." During the lunch recess, Amara received a text from Harlan. "Partnership vote canceled. Clean out your desk." She showed Claire the message. Claire's eyes welled, but she smiled. "Then we start our own firm. Or I run for office. We rebuild." The afternoon session brought the board's final witness, a private investigator who admitted under oath to accessing their cloud without warrant. Vargas's face hardened. She recessed for 30 minutes and returned with a written ruling. The court finds the defendant's actions constitute unlawful discrimination under the New York State Human Rights Law and the Fair Housing Act. The eviction order is vacated. The plaintiffs may remain in their home. Furthermore, the Pinecrest Estates Homeowners Association is ordered to issue a full public apology, published in the New York Times and delivered at the next community meeting, acknowledging discriminatory enforcement. Damages in the amount of $250,000 are awarded to cover legal fees and emotional distress. The board's counsel is referred to the State Bar for investigation regarding evidence tampering. The gavel fell. Reporters surged forward. Amara and Claire stood together, hands openly linked for the first time in public. The board members sat frozen, faces pale. Outside on the courthouse steps, cameras flashed. Amara felt the weight of the lost partnership lift even as a new uncertainty settled. How would they pay the mortgage without her salary? Claire whispered. "We figure it out together." But both knew the victory had carved deep scars. Severed professional ties, lost grants, friends who had quietly distanced themselves. The irreversible losses were already counting. The public apology came 2 weeks later at the Pinecrest community meeting, streamed live on the local news. The board president stood at the podium, voice strained. "We acknowledge that our enforcement of the covenants was discriminatory and caused harm to Ms. Reynolds and Professor Thompson. We apologize unreservedly and commit to revising all governing documents to comply with current law." Cameras captured every uncomfortable second. Amara and Claire watched from their living room, the same balcony where they had once argued now bathed in morning light. The house felt different. Still theirs, but forever marked by the battle. Amara's new reality hit quickly. Harlan and Associates issued a terse press release about mutual separation. Within days she had hung out her own shingle, Reynolds Civil Rights Law, working from the spare bedroom with Claire as her first consultant. Claire's tenure vote passed narrowly after the publicity made the university wary of looking punitive, but her major grant evaporated. They downsized vacations, sold the second car, and leaned on each other in ways they never had before. Friends who once invited them to dinner parties now sent polite texts. Family members who had suspected but never asked now offered cautious support. The world had shifted, and not all the changes were kind. Yet on a crisp November evening they stood on the same balcony, city lights sparkling below. Amara pulled Claire close, the embrace no longer hidden. "We won the house. We lost the illusions." Claire rested her head on Amara's shoulder. "And we kept each other. That's the only victory that matters." They kissed openly under the stars, the first time without looking over their shoulders. The love that had survived cold calculations and public scrutiny felt stronger, tempered by fire. In the end, one must ask, true or false? Amara's momentary willingness to sacrifice their relationship for career survival was the only realistic path through the power structure that tried to destroy them?